and welcome into Cozy Corner. I hope you're having a wonderfully cozy day. Before we get into today's video, if you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Now this is part 2 of the 4 books I read and loved in my childhood versus the 4 books I've read and loved as an adult. Like part 1, I am recording this live, so I once again apologize for any mistakes I make, or I may make, especially with character names. And again, I've tried to make this as spoiler-free as possible for anyone who might like to read these books at some point. Also, an interesting point to note before we start is part 1 was very male-dominated. There really weren't many strong female characters, and I suppose that is a reflection of the time that those books were written in. However, as you'll see as we go through these books, there's a definite shift. So without further ado, let's dive into the video, shall we? So first up, we have the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. Starting with this book here, The Cruel Prince. This wasn't actually the first book that got me back into reading. I'm actually saving that for last. However, despite being YA or young adult, I absolutely love this series. When I think of fantasy, I instantly think of Dungeons and Dragons and an ancient world. However, I was quite surprised to find that the Folk of the Air series is set in the modern day. And while usually there's at least a couple of chapters before our characters are thrown into chaos, the Cruel Prince sees our protagonist, Jude, ripped away from everything she knows in the prologue, along with her 2 sisters. Raised by Maddox, the High King's general, Jude strives to gain a place in the court. As a mortal in the fairy realm, she is looked down on and bullied. However, Jude is incredibly resilient, being quite the fighter. She is also extremely cunning, using her ability as a mortal to lie and deceive, and whilst Jude navigates palace intrigue. The series explores themes of power, ambition, betrayal, and complicated relationships. It's an easy read, however, I did prefer the initial 3 books of the series to the sequel. However, I would still recommend reading the sequel, as it follows different characters from the original trilogy. Now we have The Magical World of Caraval by Stephanie Garber. Another easy read, Caraval follows Scarlet, our protagonist in this book, as she participates in the magical game of the same name, hosted by the mysterious legend. She had wished for this moment for years, even going so far as to write the legend himself. However, when an invitation to Caraval finally appears, Scarlet is now hesitant to go. Spurred by an event that leaves her no choice but to take part, Scarlet must navigate a dangerous world of illusions, magic, and romance, unsure of what is real and what is part of the performance, because in Caraval, nothing and no one is what or who they may seem to be. And this is continued in the other 2 books in this trilogy, which not only continues to follow Scarlet, but her sister Tala too, both of whom I grew quite fond of, as well as other interesting and magical characters that quite literally had me despising them one minute and absolutely loving them the next. The series delves into the complexities of perception, loyalty, and the nature of wishes, exploring dark undertones that will leave you questioning everything. There is a sequel, however I've not included it in this section because it's actually the next book in this list. But before we move on to that, there is a Christmas themed novella, Spectacular, that takes place after the events of the last book, Finale, and is a and is just as, tongue-tied. And it's just a wonderfully cute, cozy read. Now, the sequel that I mentioned before is the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, also by Stephanie Garber. Take a minute to appreciate all of these covers, because they're really eye-catching. So, while I absolutely loved Caraval and certainly missed its characters whilst reading this, I think I may have preferred Once Upon a Broken Heart, hence why it is getting its own mention. While it follows a new female protagonist, Evangeline, there are other important characters who do cross over, so for that reason I won't be able to go into too much detail. However, what I can tell you is that we start our story in Valenda. Desperate to stop an event from happening, Evangeline naively makes a deal that eventually leads her back to the magnificent North, her and her mother's birthplace. Sorry. However, if you thought Caraval was strange, the magnificent North is even stranger. Ruled by Prince Apollo Acadian, the magnificent North is known for its misty, fog-laden capital, Valafel, and its story curse, a magical phenomenon where the line between truth and fairy tale blurs, because histories and stories become intertwined over time. The curse gives power to the stories themselves, altering narratives and memories to fit a particular version of events, even rewriting personal history to serve the curse's agenda. And this is where the main portion of the story takes place. Evangeline not only has to navigate this curse, but face the consequences of the deal she makes. With a strong fairy tale aesthetic to the wondrously dark and magical characters, the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy had me riding a roller coaster of emotions that honestly I wasn't really expecting. The series' main theme is love and fate, exploring how characters navigate the blurred lines between true love and cursed destiny, often through morally grey choices and powerful sacrifices, in a dangerous world filled with magic and betrayal. With complex relationships, Once Upon a Broken Heart also highlights the risks and the consequences of altering fate. And now, to the final book in this list, and the one that got me back into reading. It is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. The only non-YA book on this list, A Court of Thorns and Roses, is most definitely the series that stole my heart. If you've watched my birthday mini vlog, you may remember seeing a pack of A Court of Thorns and Roses, or Akatar as I referred to them at the time, stickers. There are another two series in the Sarah J. Maas universe, Crescent City, which is currently 3 books long, and A Throne of Glass, which is 8 books long. While I debated including them in this list, I did, like I did for Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart, I decided not to, mainly because 1, the video would have ended up a lot longer, and 2, it would have also been very Sarah J. Maas dominated. So, A Court of Thorns and Roses follows our female main character, Feyre. After a disastrous misadventure their father, Mr. Archeron, makes, Feyre and her 2 sisters, along with their father, lose everything and end up having to live in a cramped cottage. They spend most of their remaining money on a healer, and eventually their money runs out altogether. Their father refuses to move much because of the injuries he sustained, so Feyre takes it upon herself to become the family provider and starts to hunt. This decision will see Farah being dragged away from everything she knows, across the wall and into Prythian, the land of the fairies, and home to the High Lords who rule it. There she must live for the crime that she committed. However, not everything is as it seems. As she begins to warm to the fae she once hated, Farah is plunged into a chain of events that will see her future forever changed. This amazing slow burn is not only tantalizingly spicy, but beautifully captivating too. The series explores the transformative power of love, the struggle between good versus evil, the weight of duty and sacrifice, and the importance of healing and mercy. It also delves into themes of self-discovery, the dynamics of power, mortality, and found family. So, what did you think? Have you read any of these books? What were your thoughts? Or are you planning on reading them now? Again, I do apologize for my nervousness and the lots of mistakes that I made in both this video and part 1. I really do hope to get better with that over time. But yeah, please let me know in the comment section below what you thought. Also, I'd love to hear your fantasy favorites or any recommendations you may have, or old or new. So, once again, I really hope you enjoyed this. Thanks ever so much for watching, and till next time, stay cozy.